What would you do if your husband left you for a younger woman and took all your money with him? It all started on a random Tuesday. I was at my bookstore helping a customer pick out a novel when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it. Just another notification, right? But when I finally checked it, my stomach dropped. It was a text from my husband, Daniel. "I'm leaving you. I'm moving to Chicago with my 24-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account." Haha. Yeah, he actually added a haha at the end. Classy, right? I won't lie. My first instinct was to scream, cry, or maybe throw my phone across the room. But instead, I just stood there, frozen. I finished helping my customer, wrapped her book in our signature brown paper, and smiled as she left. The only sign that my world had just been nuked was a slight tightening around my eyes. Once she was gone, I locked the door to the bookstore and sat down. My hands weren't shaking. My voice wasn't wavering. I just felt numb. I wasn't completely blindsided. The signs had been there for months. Daniel had been working late more often, but his paychecks didn't reflect any overtime. He'd suddenly started going to the gym every day, buying new clothes and acting like he was 25 again. Then there were the password changes on his phone and the way he'd guard it like it was the crown jewels. 3 months ago, I found a receipt for dinner at an expensive restaurant, on a night he'd claimed to be working late. That was the final straw for me. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank and started quietly moving my savings there. When Daniel suggested we combine our accounts to simplify things, I agreed cheerfully, while making sure my personal funds were safely tucked away. The joint account he emptied? It had just enough money to keep him from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest was long gone, along with detailed records of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. As I sat there in my bookstore, my phone buzzed again. "Don't bother begging. Emily and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Emily, the new marketing assistant at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party. She was young, bubbly, and laughed way too loudly at his jokes. I'd noticed how she touched his arm when she thought no one was looking. She was naive enough to think she was special. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd quietly consulted 2 months ago when I found hotel charges on our credit card statement. "It's time," I said simply. "He just made his move." "The papers are ready," she replied. "I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Chicago?" "No rush," I said. "Let him think he's won first." Another text from Daniel popped up. "I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy." My little shop. The successful bookstore I'd built from scratch. The one that generated more income than his middle management job. The one whose profits I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, thinking of the certified letters that would greet him in Chicago. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph. That evening, I went home to my house, the one I'd inherited from my grandmother and kept in my name despite Daniel's repeated suggestions to add him to the deed. Another lucky instinct that had paid off. As I organized the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Daniel looked so different back then, before his midlife crisis turned him into a caricature of his former self. These days, he wore shirts too tight for his softening middle and tried too hard to connect with the 20-somethings at his office. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each one more condescending than the last. "I've been planning this for months. Emily understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really." I screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admission of premeditation. The last text caught my attention. "BTW. I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. "Mrs. Evans speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately." The representative's professional tone couldn't hide her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. Daniel and Emily would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated and their hotel reservation canceled. My phone buzzed again. "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." I actually laughed out loud. Did he really think he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego grown so large that he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. "I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half." My half? Of the business I'd built myself, funded myself, grown myself. While he complained about my long hours and called it my hobby? I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. The morning after the text, I woke up to a flurry of increasingly angry messages from Daniel. His tone had shifted from smug to furious, and it was clear that he hadn't expected me to fight back. "What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets, and the hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me." I silenced my phone and set it aside. There was no point in engaging with him now. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. Instead of dwelling on his outburst, I got dressed and headed to my bookstore. Fridays were always our busiest days, and I had a new shipment of bestsellers to unpack. Life had to go on, even when your husband had run off with a marketing assistant young enough to be his daughter. As I drove to the store, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. The bookstore, once just a dream, was now a thriving business. It was my sanctuary, my pride, and my source of independence. Daniel had never truly understood my passion for it. To him, it was just a little shop, a hobby that took up too much of my time. But to me, it was everything. And now, more than ever, I was grateful for the life I had built for myself. When I arrived at the store, my assistant Sarah was already there, setting up for the day. She gave me a knowing look as I walked in. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice tinged with sympathy. "You could say that," I replied with a small smile. "But I'm fine. Let's focus on the new shipment. We've got a lot to do." As we unpacked the boxes and arranged the books on the shelves, I found solace in the familiar routine. The smell of new books, the sound of pages flipping, and the sight of customers browsing the shelves. It all grounded me. This was my world, and no matter what Daniel did, he couldn't take it away from me. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Daniel. It was his mother, Margaret. I hesitated for a moment before answering. I had always had a cordial relationship with her, but I knew where her loyalties lay. "Julia, dear," she began, her tone dripping with fake concern. "Daniel told us everything about how controlling you've been, how you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans." I put her on speaker while I arranged a window display. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me. "Did he mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Well, he said you left him no choice, that you've been cold and distant." I sighed. Of course, Daniel had spun the story to make himself the victim. "Margaret," I said, keeping my tone even, "I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money, or maybe the one where he mocked my age?" Another pause. I could almost hear her processing the information. "He did seem a bit cruel," she admitted reluctantly. I told him that text message was inappropriate. "I appreciate the call, Margaret," I said, deciding to end the conversation before it escalated. "But I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Daniel's family during the proceedings." She didn't argue. "I understand," she said quietly. "Take care, Julia." As I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me was relieved that I had stood my ground, but another part felt a pang of sadness. Margaret had always been kind to me, and it was hard to see her caught in the middle of this mess. Still, I knew I had to protect myself. Daniel had shown his true colors, and I wasn't going to let him or anyone else manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a blur of customers and tasks. By the time I closed the store that evening, I was exhausted but satisfied. I had managed to keep my focus on the things that mattered, and that felt like a small victory. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down with the paperwork my lawyer had sent over. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, and I needed to stay on top of everything. As I reviewed the documents, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life, and no one was going to stop me. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the future. It was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Daniel's betrayal had shaken me, but it had also given me the strength to stand up for myself. I had my bookstore, my independence, and my determination. And that was more than enough to keep me going. The fallout from Daniel's actions was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I had survived the initial blow, and I knew I would survive whatever else he threw my way. This was my life, and I was going to live it on my own terms. The weeks following the emergency hearing were nothing short of chaotic. Daniel, in his desperation, tried every trick in the book to challenge the divorce settlement. He claimed the bookstore had been his brainchild, that he had invested significant sums in its early days, and even went as far as to suggest he had been my silent business partner all along. Each of his claims was swiftly dismantled by the meticulous records I had kept over the years. Receipts, bank statements, and even old emails proved that the bookstore was entirely my creation, funded and nurtured by my own efforts. "He's getting desperate," my lawyer remarked during one of our frequent calls. His girlfriend's social media posts show they're now living in her tiny studio apartment. It seems living on a marketing assistant's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he had envisioned. Meanwhile, my bookstore was flourishing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The local gossip about my situation had an unexpected silver lining. It brought in a wave of new customers. Women from all walks of life came in to show their support, often leaving with armfuls of books they hadn't initially planned to buy. Their solidarity was heartwarming, and their purchases were a boon to my business. My ex tried something similar. One customer confided while purchasing a collector's edition novel. He thought he could take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Daniel, his tone oscillating between anger and manipulation. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support." I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. His attempts to manipulate the situation only served to strengthen my case. Through the grapevine, I heard that Emily was having second thoughts. Sharing her small studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she had imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during their secret hotel rendezvous felt different under the harsh light of reality. She began posting about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes. My lawyer mentioned during an update call, she removed her relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for Daniel. Almost. But then I remembered his ha-ha after telling me he'd emptied our joint account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age, and the way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt pride. Pride in my foresight, my quiet strength, and my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. 6 months later, my bookstore had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Daniel struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he'd dismissed was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining traction nationally. The success of the online store was a testament to the changing times and my ability to adapt. News of Daniel's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried dating apps, but found women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his history through office gossip, steered clear. Emily had apparently warned her friends about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she'd left. His career suffered too. The company's HR department launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with employees. My lawyer kept me updated on Daniel's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied, his claim of unfair distribution dismissed based on the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke, she told me, laughing. The judge asked if haha made theft less illegal. The bookstore's success brought unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned wife, but as a savvy businesswoman who'd protected her interests. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about keeping business and personal finances separate. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of Emily. And always trust your instincts. Daniel's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He'd gotten involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions. But he's still blaming everyone else. You, Emily, his company, the judge. I listened politely but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a third bookstore location and a possible expansion into rare book collections. The only reminder of Daniel's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office, his final text before I blocked his number. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Below it sat my latest business award, proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. As I stood in my office looking at that framed screenshot and the award beneath it, I felt a sense of closure. Daniel's attempts to belittle me and my achievements had only fueled my determination to succeed. The bookstore, once dismissed as a little shop, was now a thriving business with a bright future. And I, once underestimated and undervalued, had proven that I was more than capable of standing on my own. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever. And as I looked ahead to the future, I knew that the best was yet to come. Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more unbelievable real-life stories.